Hey there, real estate enthusiast. Welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of our series on seller financing, and in our previous video, we covered the essential questions that you need to ask if a seller is interested in seller financing. If you missed that video, we're gonna put it right here on the screen, so make sure you go ahead and take a look at that before watching this one. Today, we're taking it a step further and delving into the art of structuring the loan. Get ready to learn how to craft seller financing offer that's a win-win for both you and the seller. Let's dive in. What's up guys, my name is Stacy Johnson and welcome back to my channel where I teach you how to find your first deal and get paid. I went from negative $30,000 on my first flip to making over $200,000 in my first year of real estate, flipping and wholesaling full time. So back to the video, let's get right into it. So just get a little bit of recap as far as part 1 of the series. We went over the 4 questions that you need to ask a seller, which were, what is your loan balance? What is the monthly payment? What's the interest rate? And when does the loan mature? So now that you have all that information, you're gonna wanna structure a deal that makes sense for both parties. And in structuring that deal, there's gonna be 4 key points that you wanna cover when it comes to the seller. And you're gonna say it something like this: Mr. Seller, when it comes to seller financing, there's typically 4 things that are involved in structuring this deal. I wanna make sure that this is a win-win scenario for both me and you in this transaction. I'm gonna explain to you the 4 things that typically go on in a seller financing deal. And I think that it would be fair if you get to pick 2 things that you're firm on and I get to pick 2 things that I'm firm on. Does that sound fair? Typically, they're gonna say that sounds fair because obviously you're creating a win-win scenario for both of you. So from there, you're gonna break down 4 of the points, and here are the 4 points. Number 1 is your total purchase price. A lot of times in seller financing, the reason why a seller is willing to take seller financing is because they're super stuck on their price. And so in seller financing, you're able to give the seller what they want when it comes to their purchase price and structure the rest of the deal to what makes sense for you. Now, the second thing in this deal is the down payment. How much money are you going to put down on this property in order for the seller to finance you? Typically, you want to get as little amount of money down, but sometimes the seller is going to be unrealistic and wants most of the cash today. Now, the third thing is the total length of the loan. How many years is the seller going to finance you? Typically, most sellers will want some kind of balloon payment at the 5-year point, which means, let's say you're gonna pay $100 a month, but at the 5-year point, if there's a balloon, then you need to pay the loan off in full. The 4th thing that goes into structuring a seller finance deal is the monthly payment / interest rate. The interest rate is going to adjust the monthly payment, and you're gonna wanna make a monthly payment that makes sense for you, whether you're flipping it or you're renting it. Typically, if you're renting it, you wanna make sure your monthly payment is less than what your rental is. That way you can actually cash flow on the property. So all 4 of these things overall affect the terms of the deal. And I love seller financing because you're able to create a win-win scenario for both parties. So like I said, you're gonna ask the seller directly which of those 2 things are most important to you. And when the seller gives you those 2 things, you're gonna ask them specifically, what do you want for those 2 items? And then you, as the investor, is gonna pick the other 2 items. So let's go through an example. Let's say you go to Mr. Seller and you're like, hey, Mr. Seller, I'm gonna buy your house for $50,000 cash. The seller's like, no way, I at least need $100,000. And I'm like, okay, Mr. Seller, well, if I can pay you $100,000, would you be willing to let me pay monthly payments? Now they're intrigued. All they cared about was their purchase price, but they were willing to take it over time. And so from there, I open up the table and I say, okay, Mr. Seller, it sounds like price is super important to you. Of these 4 things, can you tell me what the second thing that's most important to you? Go ahead and list all 4 things. And let's just say Mr. Seller says, the next thing that's super important to me is his down payment. So he wants at least $30,000 down on this property. Okay, great. So we know for a fact seller wants purchase price and down payment. So the other 2 things is total term and monthly payment / interest rate. So let's say that I wanted to buy this house as a rental. I'm gonna structure those 2 terms to make sense for me as the investor. So I said, hey, Mr. Seller, I'm gonna go ahead and pay your $30,000 down. But in order for it to make sense for me, I need you to finance me over the next 30 years. On top of that, as far as my monthly payment goes, I really can only pay you $200 a month. And the reason being is because I can only rent this property out for about $800 a month. And I'm already gonna have to pay taxes, insurance, and a property manager, save some money for vacancies, repairs, and all that jazz. So really, like, my max amount I can pay is $200. Would that be okay with you? And you kind of throw it back on the seller. And from there, you just structure and negotiate. Let's say he's willing to come down on his down payment, then maybe you can pay him a little bit more per month. But you can see how if the seller picks two things and you pick two things, then you're creating a win-win scenario for both parties. So with that said, go on and get out there. Let's get some deals. I hope this video helped you learn how to structure a seller financing offer. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you on the next video. Shoots!